Hello, everybody, and welcome to Real Woman, Real Torah. I'm so excited to welcome you back for another episode in our series called Finding Myself in Torah. And in this series, we're speaking to 10 women, all from different communities and backgrounds, and having them share their personal journeys and experiences with finding themselves within Torah, finding their place, making Torah something that's their own, and their perspectives about how we can create that type of experience for women in our communities. So I am so excited today to welcome Eda Schottenstein. I'm honored that you chose to come on here. Eda's a much more professional podcast host than I am, so I feel honored that you are on here as a guest. And I was thinking about just trying to say over your bio from memory, and then I was looking at it on your website, and I was like, I'm just gonna read it because it's so beautifully written there. So Eda Schottenstein is a psychotherapist, certified ADHD coach, and the founder and CEO of the Sweats, a lifestyle clothing brand designed for clarity, movement, and confidence. She's also the co-host of the top-rated podcast From the Inside Out, where deep, honest conversations drive personal transformation. Through her platform, Multi-Role Woman, Eda explores the intersection of lifestyle and mental health, bringing raw insight, intention, and empowerment to women navigating many roles. She's also a proud wife and mother of 4, living the very balance she helps others pursue. That was so well said. Eda, thank you for joining. So happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for having me. It's so great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, and I'm excited. Just like when I was reading that bio, I was thinking about how, I'm excited to kind of the angle I would love to take with this conversation is really how you see the role of Torah specifically in your life, sort of fitting into that general, I guess, mission you have of trying to bring mental health and balance to the lives of the people that you serve. So maybe let's start a little bit with your background. So tell us a little bit about some of the educational experiences you had growing up. Did you connect to Torah learning when you were young, when you were a student? Are there any key moments in your educational experiences that really stick out as being, impactful?
Right. Okay. So did I connect to Torah learning? I guess yes and no. I didn't connect naturally to Torah learning, nor did I connect to learning at all. I wasn't a great student, but what I connected to was good teachers. And that to me really paved the path for me in all the things I'm interested in today. It's just the teachers. I feel like so many of us remember that one teacher or hopefully more than one teacher who we connected to, who spoke to us. And even if it was a subject that we didn't necessarily love, that teacher made us love the subject. And I see it today with my kids. One of my daughters loves math, and I can't believe she loves math, but she has an incredible math teacher who really brings the classroom to life. So for me, this was such a random subject. It was like Parshas Truma, right? In Chumash Shemais. And I remember every Keli in the Mishkan. I remember so much from that Parsha because I had a great teacher. And every time we read the Parsha, every year, Parshas Truma, I think back to that time when that incredible teacher taught us the Parsha, and how with a good educator, any subject can be brought to life, including, and I would say especially, Torah learning. And so for me, my early experience was I was not a good learner. I, in fact, had, ADHD, so I was distracted very often. But somehow this, and not just her, there were others, but she kind of stands out to me because she had this ability to bring even the Kalim of the Mishkan, which is it's kind of a rote memorization, when you're just trying to memorize it, it's not an easy thing to do. And so it just I had a few great teachers who I think instilled those early, the early seeds, planted those early seeds that I think all the way, throughout my entire journey until today, I think I could still attribute my love for Torah learning today to that teacher back then.
Well, can you share more about that? First of all, I would love to hear about how your teacher brought to life the Parshas Truma, because that to me is fascinating. How would somebody bring that to life? So I don't know if you want to share more about that. And also, do you have any specific examples of things you remember, memorable experiences with specific teachers that you feel you carry with you now? If you have any examples of that.
So one of the things she did was she would walk up and down the aisles in the class. So a lot of teachers stand in front of the classroom, and I feel like that has its value also. I don't know, everyone has their style, but there was something about her walking by my desk and looking at me making eye contact. Also, she had this way of asking. She would ask questions to random people. So you never knew if she was asking you a question. So you always had to be prepared to answer it. But that wasn't really the main thing because there were other teachers who did that. And if I got distracted, I got distracted. There's nothing I could do. And sometimes I felt really embarrassed actually when teachers would call on me and I wasn't listening and I couldn't answer the questions they asked. But I think it was her passion. That's what I think it was. I think that a teacher who's passionate about the subject, it's like words that come from the heart enter the heart. I think it just naturally transmits to the students. And I think the same goes for Yiddishkeit and parents with children. It's like, I love Shabbos. I always loved Shabbos and like the impact that it has in my life. And I think because of that, my kids look forward to Shabbos every week. It's like this love that you develop within yourself. I think as an educator, if you are an educator, there's all these courses on how to be an effective teacher, and I'm sure that they have their value. But I think the main thing is like that she herself, I think, was passionate about the teaching, and that was the key.
Wow. Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think, just thinking about it now, like I feel like I've thought about this a lot, and people say this a lot. Like, the main things that the teachers that you feel passionate about what you're teaching, and I think like just hearing you talk about it, I feel like what it is like when you see somebody else really passionate and excited about something. It's almost like, oh, what am I like? And even if to you it seems so dry and like technical, you're like, what am I missing? Like, I must be missing something. There must be more here that I'm not getting. That's like really profound and really exciting. And like, you almost like it builds this faith in the subject. It's like there must be something here. And like, it creates this buy-in of like, I want to discover, I want to explore. Like, it creates this curiosity when you see somebody else like really passionate about something. Yeah, and I have a memory also of I had a math teacher in high school that also was like that, where like he was enamored by math, like literally, like it was to him, it was like art, it was like beauty, it was like this super exciting, fascinating, like literally like a piece of art. And like, even if we didn't totally get why he was so excited about it, like I don't know if we really understood it, like definitely not on the level that he did, but like it definitely created this curiosity where I was like, oh, there's something more here. It's not just a bunch of numbers. There's something like really cool here that I'm not getting. So yeah, I totally relate to that. And I feel like it just speaks to like the power of relationship, like how much the relationship like impacts our learning experience.
For sure. So much is about the relationship. It's the relationship, our relationship with the teacher, even our relationship. And I feel like a lot of these lessons translate into so many other areas of our lives, relationship with our teacher, relationship with our friends, with our students. It's like, if you feel the passion, it just naturally, like there's this energy that you create in your passion about whatever it is that you're doing that I think has an impact. And I think it's so empowering actually, because there's so much that I myself worked on, and that the ripple effect, I just saw the ripple effect naturally. And, I think we all have that power, is whether we're educators or people who are trying to connect more to Torah. I think that because that's the topic of our conversation. It's like, find that point of connection, and then when you find that point of connection, make it personal, then you start to feel like the passion in it, and then hopefully that will have very nice, it'll have a good outcome, is what I've seen in my own life.
I'm curious, like maybe just if you could share about your own process and I think for me a lot of this was as an adult, realizing like where I wanted to make be more a part, make Torah more a part of my life in a prominent way. So maybe share a little bit about yourself, like what has helped you like find yourself within Torah? How have you made it something that's yours?
So it didn't happen in like a linear way, I should say. Like I really, it started off with this, maybe like an attempt to understand myself, right? Because I did have a lot of challenges as a kid, learning challenges and others as well. And I really wanted to learn about the mind and the brain and behaviors, and like why some things, can bother me and not someone else, like just like the basics of human like behavior and interaction. So I started off with psychology. I went to school, I studied psychology. I became a mental health counselor. I went to an ADHD certification academy. So I got my certification in ADHD coaching. Like, it was really an attempt to understand myself. And through that process, so I didn't have a love for learning as a kid. And if you speak to my mother, it's like she's still so surprised at how much learning I do today and how much I love learning, because I was not that person as a kid. And I had to, like we said earlier, I had to really develop that passion and the spark and make it personal. So it really started with that. And over time, as I became more immersed in learning psychology, naturally that love of learning, right, started to blossom. And then it translated to other things. So if I was on a Pesach program, I would go to lectures, I would go to classes, I just wanted to expand my knowledge because I didn't feel like I got a good education as a child. It was partly my own fault, right? But also partly maybe sometimes I didn't have the right teachers. But as an adult, I started to become more immersed in Torah learning alongside psychology, and I started to see these parallels within Tanya, within Chassidus, and how like so much of what I learned in psychology is rooted in the teachings of the Torah. So that really is what, it really came much later for me. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
Wow,
So
that's so interesting. Yeah, I feel like for a lot of people, it starts that way. It starts with like wanting to understand yourself,
yeah,
and that drives you to want to understand more about anything. Yeah.
yeah. And and the greatest discovery, and I think this is so, this really changed my life quite a lot, is it was almost like psychology was like a stepping stone for me toward understanding the impact of the Torah. So psychology, it's like it helped me understand myself, and then Torah helped me transcend myself. It's like a whole nother level. It's almost like going directly to the source. Um, Torah is the source, but obviously many of us have different ways of getting there. But I do feel that Torah is the real source and MS, and a lot of people who don't connect naturally to the teachings of the Torah, and I'm only speaking from my own experience, but I feel that maybe it's because it wasn't, wasn't presented to a person in the right way and in a real MStic way. You know what I mean? And that's really what it is, because it's incredible, like the teach what Torah can do in a person's life. It really brings a certain level of freedom that I don't think psychology in and of itself can achieve.
Wow, interesting. I want to go back to that of like talking about the limits of psychology and like where Torah comes in. Maybe first give some examples of like how do you see like specifically how Torah has shaped you as a person, as a professional, a mother, a friend. Like what has Torah specifically brought into your life that psychology didn't?
Yeah, so psychology gave me tools. I think Tyra provided clarity on what tools are the right ones and what tools are the wrong ones, right? So you have people who are so immersed, and I'm one of those people. I was one of those people, and maybe still am to an extent, right? I don't know for sure, but self-help, right? I've read so many self-help books, and I really put in like the effort and the time in working on myself, and I still do that today. But I found that a lot of the tools that are provided by, let's say, the motivational space in psychology are so much about like, and I want to be careful when I say this, and I'm not putting down those avenues for healing and growth because they have so much value. But I'm saying, like, for me, it was like it was very much about like reaching the next level and like accomplishing more and being more productive and not productive, I should being busier, right? And like maximizing my day. And those are all good things. But I feel that like, so my entry point was Shar HaBitachon. That's when I started becoming very immersed in Torah learning. Shar HaBitachon teaches that you're supposed to use your talents and your strengths, but if you do it to a point of anxiety, of stress, of like, let's say ego-based, if it's an ego-based process, then it can do more harm than good. And I think a lot of people are self-sabotaging, doing things that ultimately don't serve them, because it's very self-focused. I think so, and it had a lot of value during that time, and luckily I was able to use it as a sort of a springboard to start becoming more immersed in Shar HaBitachon. Shar HaBitachon, what I learned through it was that I can do less and accomplish more. I can harness my strengths. I can. It's kind of like, it's hard to explain. It's like the psychology is the tools, Tyra is the clarity.
Yeah, because I think often there's a lot of discussion about how like we can utilize Torah to achieve mental health and clarity, and it can sort of help us with our anxieties and our a lot of kind of help us with mindfulness and kind of developing ourselves and doing all our inner work and all that stuff. And I think sometimes the question that sort of comes from that is like, why do we need Torah specifically? Like, what is Torah offering, bringing into our lives that we can't already get in psychology? But I think you summed it up really well. And I love what you said before about Torah sort of allowing us to transcend ourselves, not just understand ourselves.
There's also like this analogy of like, let's say you have virtual reality, right? And then you have reality. Virtual, when you're immersed in virtual reality, it feels real, right? So it's sort of like, it's what gives the impression of being real versus what's actually real. And there's this example of like a scented candle, right? If you get a scented candle, you'll get that scent, right, of, let's say, a lavender scent. But then if you go to the actual lavender garden, you might not smell it. It might not have the same like scent as the candle, meaning it's not as strong, it's not as potent. But it doesn't change the fact that the lavender is the source, right? So, and I don't know if this is a good analogy, it just popped into my head, but the scented candle is sort of like the psychology. It's definitely effective, meaning it's helping. But if you knew you can have access to the plant, would you buy the scented candle? Even if the plant doesn't feel as potent, at least in the beginning, So that's, I mean, looking back at my whole journey, I feel like Tarot is like the plant, like the source, and the scented candle was like the psychology. Like, if it was great, it had its effect. It was impactful, but then I found the plant.
I love that example. Yeah, it's like a very that's a really good image to keep in mind. Yeah, that's really great. I'm curious if you have any like a specific area of mental health that you can give as an example for this, like just to bring it down.
If you believe that that you are exactly where you're meant to be, Hashem put you here with all of your flaws and all of your weaknesses and strengths, right? And you're here, and you fully accept your flaws and everything, and that Hashem gave them to you, let's say, as a gift. Then you begin to see the things that maybe the mainstream maybe might view as negative or something that needs to be fixed or changed. You see it differently. I used to think that like I needed to fix my symptoms, right? I have distractibility, like I get distracted. So let me see if I can learn how to focus. Like, meaning something is wrong, I need to fix it. And conventional thinking in psychology, right, especially, or psychiatry, would say, okay, well, let's figure out what the problem is and find a solution. Let's either medicate or, find out how we can fix this problem. And then in learning Sha'ar B'Tachon, it was like, let me understand how this problem, perceived problem, right, what I thought was a problem, is actually good, right? If you believe that that everything Hashem does is good, there's no problems per se to fix. Now, I'm not saying people shouldn't take the route of medication and the tools that psychology share with us, but I'm saying like the perspective shift for me was, instead of seeing the challenges I have as problems, I'm seeing them as, how are they good? So that's when I started to channel this distractibility, which I don't even use that word much anymore, into multi-role woman, right? It's a multifaceted life. Women, there's so many good things about being distracted, but I don't like to even use that word, because it just means that I'm multidimensional. That means that I could do a bunch of things at once, and that's why I'm doing so many different things. And if I didn't have these tendencies, I wouldn't be here today. And I feel like I've achieved a lot more than I ever thought I imagined I could through that type of thinking. The Hashem mindset is like, Hashem, if Hashem gave me this, it's a gift. I need to find out why. And I'll use whatever channel is necessary to get to that point, but it's just a whole different lens through which I see the world. And because I see myself in that way, I naturally see other people in that way. And I'm very non-judgmental as a person. I don't, like, I'm always giving people the benefit of the doubt. And it's not like I have to even try. And if someone does something or says something, I always think about like how, okay, there must be a reason. It's not like, oh, how could they have done this? And I think that it just changed the way that I show up. So whereas I think this is addressing what you asked, because here I am. I still get distracted, and you'll notice in this conversation, I will probably get distracted here and there and jump around. But look, it's part of who I am, and it is what it is, but for good things. And not that it's always going to be easy, but I do believe that Hashem created me the way I'm supposed to be, and this is how I am. And of course, I'm going to always try to improve myself, but remember that nothing is a problem. Everything is just a an opportunity to explore and grow. And I see myself in that way. I see the clients I used to see in that way. And like the teacher, when you see, like when a therapist sees their client as not a problem that needs to be fixed, but as an opportunity that needs to be met, it's a whole different experience for the client and for the counselor. And it's so empowering. And I think Torah is a big part of that. Is if you see Hashem in every person, then you see the potential in every person, as opposed to seeing all the problems that need to be fixed.
I think that was an amazing example. And yeah, if I could just share like an idea that I just learned recently that actually totally shifted my perspective about this exact thing that you just said. And first of all, I never understood the full, I guess, connotation of the word, of the multi-role woman, like that term that you use. But yeah, that really gives a lot of insight into what you mean by that.
It was a reframing of ADHD.
Okay, I didn't realize that, and that's so cool. But okay, so I just a shout out to Dach L'Nashim, which is like a new program that just started. Mirka's put it out, and it's like basically like this sort of Hasidus, I guess they say kind of like a kailal, where like women can like, they have like shiurim, and they give out these booklets of like different sources and Hasidus to learn on different topics. So the topic that they started with, I just joined it, and it's been really enjoyable. And the topic they started with was this concept of hiskalalus, which means integration. And one of the ideas that was discussed was how, and this is so revolutionary to me, which is what you're talking about, of like how we normally have this concept of like, if I'm like doing a million things at once, that's like a bad thing. It means I'm doing nothing fully. I'm not really focused on anything. I'm not like fully investing in one thing at a time. And like, wouldn't it be so much better if I could like really focus on one thing and really invest in that? And that's always, I think, been my struggle also, which I don't struggle with ADHD, but like I think all of us sort of have that general, I mean, part of living in real life is like being distracted all the time and like constantly playing a million different roles. And we always think of that as like a downside, as a negative thing. And one of the things I was saying was that what makes human beings unique, like different than animals, is that we have this multifacetedness, is that we have like, we're both intellectual and emotional and practical, and we have so many different facets to our personalities and so many different talents and capabilities. And like part of being a complete human being is having all of them. And like, if we would just have intelligence and not have emotion, like that wouldn't be human. And if we just had emotion and didn't have intelligence, that wouldn't be human. And part of being human is having the balance. And actually, and the reason why it's actually a higher level, like you're actually like living up to what it means to be a human being more when you're able to live in that balanced state and having multiple different things simultaneously. Because what you're basically realizing is the fact that you really transcend all those things. Like you're not any of those individual characteristics or any of those individual roles that you play. You're really something beyond all of them. And when you can kind of rise above and like allow yourself to be all of them, that really like actualizes what it really means to be a human being in the truest sense. It was a very like eye-opening concept. And I think the way you like spoke about it playing out, like when you can understand that idea that this is not a problem that needs to be fixed, but there's actually like a real value to this thing, which I thought was a problem. That's really powerful.
People often think like, if I accept this, then I won't change. But just because I've accepted the fact that this is my multifaceted life doesn't mean that I'm not going to still, try to sometimes be less distracted or hone in on certain projects. It's like, we've also been fed this idea that the 10,000 hour rule, right? So you have to put all your eggs in one basket. Like there's this notion like the jack of all trade, master of none, right? But a lot of people don't know that phrase actually has a second part that's been sort of like left out. It's really jack of all trades, master of none, oftentimes better than master of one. And we've like sort of like left out that second part, but
I never heard that. Wow.
Phrase. Yeah. So yes, for sure. When you have someone like, I don't know, LeBron James, if anyone knows who he is, a basketball player, if you're born with a basket, like playing with, being drawn to the ball, then sure, put all your eggs in that basket. And a lot of people are, I would say very few people are born with this passion and talent for one thing. That's probably maybe 0.1% of our population. The rest of like the 99.99% are people who are not born with a ball in their hand, and they're not necessarily drawn to one big thing. And life does change, and we have, especially women, especially from women, we evolve over time. It's like many of us, we get married young, and we have kids right away, so our identities are constantly evolving, and our children are so wrapped up in that. So it's like we have to be able to be like oftentimes better than master of one, right? We're reinventing ourselves. And I think that the notion that we have to always be like laser focused on one big thing can hold us back. So there's definitely value in, being like focused on one thing and getting really good at it. But for people who can't, it's like, well, there's a reason that you can't, and it's probably it's probably a good reason, and it's time to figure out, how to navigate how to navigate it, but with a positive mindset.
Yeah, and I think when we do like try to fix these problems, so to speak, like take the medication or do the therapies or like do whatever it is to like with these things that aren't necessarily like essentially a problem, like there is something very beneficial and like and ideal about those things, but it's like it's with a purpose. It's like, okay, like I need to get this project done, so I'm gonna do what I can to focus on this one project because that's what needs to be done right now, but there's like a very specific purpose to it. It's not like I think that's very different than saying like this is this problem in me that needs to be fixed. Yeah.
Right. And part of that, like one of the tools I use myself, and I used to share with clients was, when if you find yourself being distracted and you have to get this task done, usually the best way to do it is to what I call manufacturing motivation, right? So you create a climate where it's less, it's easier to focus, right? So for example, if someone wants to cut out sugar, the best way to do that is to not buy sugar and to not buy candy at the store when you go grocery shopping. If it's not in your house, you're much less likely to eat it. The problem is when you bring it into your house and then you're trying to avoid eating it, but it's right there. And then when it's late night and you get like a little sugar craving, you're going to eat it. But if it's not in your house, you won't. So it's kind of like the same thing for people who are, let's say feeling like they want to accept their experience, but they also want to work toward growth, is to make sure that to set up the external environment so that you don't have to worry about being internally motivated all the time, because that's not natural, to always be motivated internally. Just a little tip for
that's a really good tip. Yeah, definitely relate to that with eating habits and
women.
And other and other habits I want to change. So I guess maybe my next question would be like, turning outward in terms of like the way you see our community and like how we as a community can kind of shift. Well, I guess maybe I'll start with this. Like, what change would you want to see in the way women in our community connect to Torah?
Knowing what you want and taking it into your own hands. So I love the story of Tzalafachad. He had 5 daughters, and who at the time, land inheritance only went to sons and not daughters. And this guy had 5 daughters, and these 5 daughters really wanted, so their father passed away, and they weren't entitled to the land, to inheritance of the land, and they were upset. So they went to Moshe, and they told Moshe, "This is unfair. We deserve this. We're entitled to this." And Moshe went to Hashem, and came back to these women and said, "You are entitled to this land." And actually, I believe, I'm not an expert in Torah, but I believe that they were able to change the laws regarding land inheritance for women. So this is a story of women who could have been held back by the rule of law, but they decided to take things into their own hands, and that actually changed the laws for so many women in the many years ahead of them. And I think they were like trailblazers. And I think that all people, not just women, people can be these spiritual trailblazers and not be held back by perceived limitations. And that's what I'd like to see, for us to all believe that we have the capacity to know what we want and to do our part to try to achieve the goal that we're trying to reach, to try to reach the goal that we're trying to reach. And I think that it's just a mindset. It's really a mindset.
What do you think are like the narratives that, I guess, the mindsets that you think hold people back?
Whatever self-limiting beliefs, are we've been nurtured with. I think it's our minds are very powerful. I don't know specifically. I can't say specifically what they are. I think I see that a lot of women see some of the laws that women have as oppressive, covering our hair, the laws of NIDA. I mean, a lot of things are seen in a different sort of light. And I think that we can see it as empowering. I mean, it's so much about the lens through which we see the world.
Have there been things like that you, I guess, have you ever gone through a shift like that where like there was something in Torah that seemed to you like oppressive or didn't sit well with you and like you shifted your perspective on it?
Yeah, modesty, like tznius, and hair covering.
How did that shift? How did that shift for you?
So at a certain point, like I didn't think I would ever wear like the. Well, when I got married, obviously I wore sheitel. At a certain point, I started taking hair out of the front because I couldn't figure out a way to just get it looking right in the front. But then the lace fronts came out, and then there was the opportunity to maybe have a more natural looking sheitel. But when I got it, it didn't look right. And I thought, look, I saw it as like a sacrifice. Like I'm making a sacrifice. I'm not gonna look as good as I would look with my hair out, but I really want to do this mitzvah in the right way. So I got a full sheitel and I wore it. And then I would say within a year, my lace, the sheitel that I figured out how to wear properly, ended up looking way better than anything I've ever done before. I never thought that would be possible, but I took on that mitzvah. And then tznius was also hard for me. And not necessarily in the day to day, more like going to the gym or going to the beach, things like that. Like I just didn't love the idea of wearing a shrimp-kleid or wearing a skirt over, pants if I was working out. And I think a lot of women have this struggle with this that I've spoken to. And it's not easy. It's still to this day not easy, and I'm still working on it. But it's also like you said, like about the relationship. It's about the relationship with Hashem. It's about trust, and not sometimes, but when you trust that something is the right thing, that even if it's not so comfortable, and even if you don't fully understand it, you know that it's worth the effort. I think a lot of people who struggle around Torah observance are maybe, again, I'm not making any assumptions here. I'm just talking from my own experience. Maybe have not been all in. Meaning, like, if somebody really were to make a halata, let's say, and a lot of people are afraid to do this because then it's hard to go back once you've taken upon yourself to do new things. But if you do something for, I don't know, a couple months, and I would love for someone to try it and like report back, tell me how that went. Try to increase in certain mitzvahs, in your observance of certain mitzvahs, and come back to me in a couple months and tell me how that was for you. I'm so curious to know how their experience changed through observing that mitzvah. And I don't know, some people might have a different relationship than I did with mitzvahs and with Torah, but I personally find that it's really enhanced my life in a major way on all levels.
Yeah, I think like sometimes we wait for like the learning to come first, like for me to have a deep understanding of why and why this makes sense. And I think like what you're saying is like sometimes you have to start with just trust. Like if you have this strong relationship with Hashem and I trust that this is true and real, and then just jumping in. And sometimes when you do something for a few months, you'll find yourself changing naturally just from the commitment of doing it. Yeah, I think like sometimes we underestimate the power of that.
Yeah, and also I think specifically with Shahar B'Tachon, it's like a muscle. Like your B'Tachon, people think you're born with it. You're not. Like I had to work on my B'Tachon, especially through some of my life's bigger challenges. And the more I worked on it, the more I kind of like went into a higher frequency of living, if that makes any sense. And now it's a process. It didn't just happen. I had to really work on it. And it's the same with same with a bunch of other things in my life. But the more you make that commitment, because it's about the relationship with Hashem, I think it's a worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah, for sure. One more question I'll ask you before we get to our closing questions. So, like, we live in a world where, women have so much opportunity to advance their secular education and their careers. Do you think that has an impact on the way we relate to our Yiddishkeit? And the way we might approach our Torah learning?
It can have an impact, but I think that it's like maybe some people try to fit Torah into their secular pursuit of their career. I
Mm,
think that Torah is just it's so much a part of it, meaning like if you approach your career, right, from the Torah lens, then there's no conflict. There's really no conflict. And I've seen it in our, I mean, really my husband, because he's a successful entrepreneur, business person. And I've watched his evolution too as a person, becoming closer to Hashem, closer to Tyra. And I think through that process, I've seen him achieve more business success,
mm,
materially, like forget the spiritual side of things. I think that the pursuit of your career is a spiritual endeavor. And if you
mm,
see it that way, then there is no conflict. I think if we separate the two and we say, okay, we have I have my secular life and I have my spiritual life, my Torah life, and I have to make time for them separately, then I think that there's a challenge, that it presents a challenge. I think that if Torah comes first, then the other stuff flows. I mean, I use this analogy quite a bit, so um, people might have heard it, but it's always worth repeating. It's the analogy of the jar, where if you put the big rocks in first, then there's room for the smaller particles. But if you put the smaller particles in first, then you try to get the big rocks in. There's no room for the big rocks, right? So you have the rocks first, then the marbles, then the sand, then the water. But if you put the water in first, there's no room for anything else. So interesting. Tara is usually, I mean, water is probably a better comparison for Tara, but here it's a little different, where you have the big rocks, and the big rocks are the fundamentals. You have the Tyra, then somehow other things really naturally fall into place.
yeah. And I think it's interesting because I think sometimes we look at, these secular influences, or like, like what what was the motivator for like girls' education in the first place was the fact that like girls were going to public schools, right? And like being exposed to secular education on a very high level. And then we were like, okay, we need to balance that out with Torah learning. And I think it's interesting, like for you and maybe for other women too, like sometimes like investing in your own education in, like for you studying psychology was actually like an avenue through which you discovered your love of Torah. And I think sometimes like once we're once we're like using sort of expanding ourselves in other areas, it can push us to want to also expand ourselves within Yiddishkeit and within Torah and like go deeper in that way with
Yeah,
our Yiddishkeit. Have you found that?
for sure. I think whatever I've learned in the pursuit of like my, I guess, secular subjects, right? Um, Torah has allowed me to do so much more with it. It's like you could, like we said earlier, like psychology is about learning about your mind, and then Tyra is about transcending it. So all the things that's the secular world can offer us, Tyra just like catapults it to new levels. It like opens up all these new channels because it's above nature. Like psychology is within the confines, let's say, of nature. Tyra is
Mm,
goes beyond that.
yeah. Cool. Okay. So my last closing questions that I ask everybody. The first one is there a Torah idea you've learned that you can't unlearn? Something that changed the way you see yourself or the world?
Um, I don't know if this is a Torah idea, but it's a Shara B'tachon idea, which I guess by extension probably is. But it's the idea of um, you have to do it yourself, but you can't do it alone.
Mm,
And I actually learned this from an interview we did with Rabbi Sachs, alayhi shalom. And what it means is like you have to put in your effort. A lot of people, they put their full trust in Hashem, and maybe that might come with this assumption that I don't have to do anything. And this idea that our hishtadlus, our effort, is so important, but we also have to remember it's from Hashem. The reason I'm
mm,
saying I mean, it's not that I can't unlearn it, it's that I can't stop thinking about it,
mm,
because it's like I think our mission is to discover why we're here, and part of that is to put in our effort, and to be able to know that we're giving it everything that we have, but not to the point of anxiety and exhaustion, because that's an ego-based behavior. So it's like finding I'm constantly striving to find this balance between hishtadlus, doing my hishtadlus and doing my part, and then trusting Hashem that, he's a partner in everything that I'm doing. Because very often, like, people will ask me to do different things like workshops and talks, and I struggle with whether or not it's something I should or shouldn't do. It's like, Hashem, is this something I should do? Is it something I shouldn't do? Like, what's my effort? It's not really like, because there's this multifaceted part of my life. I can be distracted, even this podcast. So it's kind of like, it's a constant journey in that, like, so that Torah thought for me is always front and center in my mind, is just making sure that I'm doing what Hashem wants me to do, and obviously using my strengths, using my talents, whatever it is that I'm here with, and then trusting Hashem that He's leading me on the right path.
You have to do it yourself, but you can't do it alone. That's really great. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, and last thing. So I know you spoke about Shar B'Tachon a few times. Is there anything else, like an underrated learning suggestion, something that women might not know about or might not think is for them, but you think that they might really love? It could be like a book or a pod, anything.
So I think the underrated learning suggestion is 5 minutes a day, because I'm very big on like breaking down tasks into the smallest possible bits that make it impossible to say no to. So if somebody wants to start, I don't know, exercising, that's a very common one. Like, I would probably break it down to just put your sneakers on in the morning. Forget the exercise. Put your sneakers on in the morning, and if you get out, you get out. If you don't, you don't. But you did that. You made that little step, and obviously, chances are that you're probably going to even move a little faster, even if you don't work out, right? If you're wearing sneakers.
That's such a good tip.
It really does work. Like, just breaking it down so much where it's very difficult to not do it. So with Torah learning, it's like Shar B'Tachon. I started with 5 minutes a day, and I'm not perfect. There are days that I forget. I also have like accountability people in my life. So I do it with my mother and my sister daily. Sometimes we forget to. I do it with a few. I used to actually do it. At one point, I was doing it like 5 or 6 times a day for 5 minutes a day. But I started with 5 minutes a day. I set my timer, and I couldn't get out of that, whether it's reading from the book or listening to Shais Taub's Soul Words. He has soulwords.org. He has the full Shar B'Tachon series. It's amazing. You could do it when you're driving. You could do it when you're walking. You could do it when you're doing the dishes, when you're cooking. It's like, it's so easy. And so I think that's very underrated, because it's usually the small things that lead to big things. Yeah, there was something else, but it just slipped my mind. I can't remember. But I would start there. That's usually the smaller and it is, the more effective it is.
Yeah,
as
for sure.
As counterintuitive as that sounds,
Yeah, no, totally. And I think when we try to, like, I know for myself, like, I'm always setting like very ambitious goals that just backfire, because I just give up before I start. So that's a really good tip.
You could set the ambitious goal. There's actually another interesting exercise. I guess I'll leave your listeners with this, but it's called, so we underestimate what we could do we overestimate what we could do in a year, and we underestimate what we could do in a decade. So there's this idea that if you, like, the goals that you have, we should have big goals and big dreams. There's nothing wrong with that. But to make those dreams that we want to achieve, let's say in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, and we write them down, but nothing is too big. Like, you can just go beyond what you even believe is possible, right? With our limited minds. And you write down like the 5 or 10 things that in a perfect world you want to achieve, and you write them as if you've already achieved them. So for example, let's say you want to write a book, right? You'd write, I am a New York Times best-selling author, right? Reach for the sky, reach for the stars. Then the daily tasks are broken down to the smallest possible pieces, right? So that's how it works. It's like, not to say that you shouldn't have big goals, for sure have big goals, but if you want to achieve them, execution is the hardest part. That's, in my experience, our best bet at execution is like just the smallest thing, break it down. I know I'm repetitive here, but like, I can't even say it enough.
Yeah.
And do the next thing and see where you get.
Well, thank you. That was actually I'm so happy that you added that in, because like for me, being by nature a big dreamer, like part of me feels a little sad. Like it feels like a loss when it's like, oh, you got to make it super practical and like break it down to the smallest possible parts. And I'm like, okay, but that's so uninspiring.
Right,
But
right,
okay, I
right,
guess
right.
it's just practical. But I think
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love that you brought that in. That, like, you could actually have both. You could have the big dreams and don't let go of the big dreams. But that's for the decade, you know?
Yeah, and the one thing I learned is that for my husband, and all of his business endeavors, like he's so good at execution, and that's where so many people get, like, I guess, tripped up, and held back, and they don't achieve
Mm,
their goals because so many people are so good at ideas and like thinking about what we want to achieve, but then there's so much stress involved in getting there, and execution is where most people just end up, you know, losing their way. So that's what that's for. Yeah. So I'm glad that you enjoyed that. I'm glad we clarified that. An important
yeah.
clarification.
Yeah, that was really good. Wow, thank you. I learned so much, by the way, from this episode. This was so fun.
Oh, thank
And thank
you.
you so much for coming on.
Thanks for
Um,
having me. Thank you for having me.
yeah,
And
I
continue
really
doing
appreciate
what
it.
you do. It's important work. And I look forward to following your podcast too. This is exciting. A podcaster with a podcaster.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Ida.